we are not alone.
These are supposed to be some of the most verified images of giants.
People who do meditation for 60 days will lengthen their telomeres.
Soon we'll get results, and we'll let you know right here on Beyond Belief. Things seem to be changing in the field of ufology.
It's going to be a bumpy ride.
That's priceless.
Isn't that amazing?
Tesla wanted free energy, and look what happened to him.
Plenty of evidence to show that they're real. The real question is how and why.
There were Egyptian hieroglyphs out in the outback of Australia.
In Australia. What are the possibilities? Mars was inhabited, and these were built. We almost can't duplicate today. These are amazing topics. What if there was something like at Area 51 deep underwater?
They were killed by some animal.
Believe me, we're just getting started. I'm George Norrie, and we here at Gaia are committed to revealing the truth.
How many times have we heard stories of Bigfoot encounters where Bigfoot is portrayed as some kind of shy and gentle giant, gathering berries and nuts, perhaps communicating telepathically, playing an innocent game of hide-and-seek with Bigfoot trackers? Well, tonight in the first half, Bigfoot perhaps as you've never heard it described before. A rampaging, dangerous predator. Get in its way and it will tear you limb from limb. William Sheehan has been gathering thousands upon thousands of eyewitness encounters of Bigfoot going back some 150 years. You may think twice about your next camping trip after hearing from William. William Sheehan is an avid fisherman, shooter, and birdwatcher whose interest was stirred in Bigfoot at a young age. As a writer, he's taken it upon himself to both gather and report on Bigfoot sightings and evidential findings from the four corners of North America with his series podcast, Bigfoot Terror in the Woods Sightings and Encounters. William Sheehan, welcome to Coast AM. How are you?
It is my distinct pleasure, Richard, to be here with you tonight.
Now, William, I happen to know that you reside in Long Island in New York, which quite a ways from traditional Bigfoot stomping grounds, places like the Pacific Northwest. What's a Long Islander doing studying Bigfoot?
Well, this has been going on for a long time with me. I was originally turned on by the Patterson-Gimlin film. I do believe that the film was real right from the get-go. And going forward many years, I have a degree in occupational therapy. I'm a licensed massage therapist in New York. And I currently work for a cardiothoracic unit in a major hospital. And I have a lot of experience through college and work with human anatomy, taking anatomy, physiology, pathology, neurology, myology, kinesiology. And I have a very good working knowledge of, in particular, the human musculoskeletal system. So when I look back at the Patty film now and dissect it with my own eyes and with my own experience and knowledge, there is no way, in my opinion, that film was faked, which is exactly what I believed when I first saw it. Since then, what has further sparked me, it was actually a confirmation to me. I was fortunate enough. Now, many people have seen clips, photographs, and pieces of what I'm about to talk about. It's a map. The map is an evacuation chart, and it's two-sided, 3 feet by 5 feet, I would say, and it comes from the survival training grounds in Washington State, run by the military. The interesting thing about this map is it covers four to be exact, different areas in the state of Washington. One they call the Desert Training Area, which is northeast of Yakima. Then there's the Sherman Peak Training Area north of Spokane, between Spokane and Nelson. You have the Rainforest and River Training Area in the uppermost, northwest corner of the state, actually right near B.C. And then there's the Seashore Training Area, which is west of Portland. Now, here's the rub on this map. This map is not like your typical map. I believe it's made out of Tyvek, like the housing wrap.
Yes.
You can't really burn it. You could cut it with a pair of scissors, but you could throw this thing in your swimming pool for a year and pull it out with no damage to it. And there's so many things on this chart. They're all helps to a soldier learning how to evade and survive in the wilderness. But what I want to bring to your attention is in one corner, there's a category and pictures entitled Dangerous Animals. And in this corner, there are little photographs that were transposed onto the map for identification. A cougar, a moose, a badger, a black bear, bobcat, coyote, and American porcupine. And guess what else is on the map, Richard?
Oh, do tell.
It is an artist's depiction of a Sasquatch with Bigfoot in parentheses underneath it. And you know why they put an artist's depiction in there? Because in this day and age when everybody is bitching and moaning, where are the pictures? Even then, they couldn't get a picture of a Sasquatch to put on their own chart.
So this is an official military training map, training document. It's an official, it's from the U.S. military, right, to train their soldiers on survival. And this Sasquatch is listed among the dangerous animals one might encounter while, taking this survival training.
That is correct. And the edition that I have is the fourth edition, dated October 2007. But the copyright, plant picture and text, was copyrighted in 1970. Now, here's the rub on this. The Patterson-Gimlin film is said to have been taken on October 20th, 1967. If you just plug 2 more months onto that, you're in 68. This map in its origins was copyrighted in 1970 in a day and a time when there were no computers, no fancy copiers that we know of today. They had to have been working on this thing for a good long time before it came together in the fashion that it is. And my thoughts are these. These fellas, these military individuals that put together this map for training purposes, number one, they don't fool around. They're not going to talk about something or show you something that's not real. It would endanger people's lives, and that's not what they're about. In fact, this map was made to save lives and teach people how to save their lives, perhaps in enemy territory, perhaps having been shot down, perhaps having been separated from their comrades. And there are edible plants on here. There are all kinds of... The point I'm making is they knew about Bigfoot in that region before Patterson and Gimlin stumbled on Patty that day at the creek.
Right, and they also recognize that Bigfoot is a dangerous, fearsome creature.
That's correct.
Let me ask...
It's listed under dangerous animals, not friendly forest creatures.
Let me ask you how you started gathering these accounts, these encounters, eyewitness accounts of encounters, and because there's thousands upon thousands of them. how you started and where do they come from?
Well, they come from all points of the compass, and I know you're a Canadian. And just for starters, Canada is rife with Bigfoot activity, particularly in Alberta, Ontario. Alberta, if I was going to name one area in your homeland, your neck of the woods, Alberta. But years ago, there were a lot of cheap, what I call like rag newspapers available. You'd find them like going into your doctor's office, sitting in a metal rack, a wire rack, going into a supermarket. Most of them were free. And a lot of them, I found out, were interconnected across the country with other publications of that ilk. And you could run ads in those papers for like $15, $20 for weeks, and you'd be in all of these. And you could run an ad for anything you want. So to put an ad in there, looking for people who have seen Bigfoot, believe they have encountered Bigfoot, etc., send your inquiries to this post office box, and wham, you're in business. Now, it's really nothing more at that time than like what Finding Bigfoot was doing with their production. And I know somebody who was at one of their town hall meetings who said it was completely legit what they were doing as far as the town hall, standing before them and the raising of hands. There are thousands upon thousands of people out there that have had encounters with Bigfoot. The problem is getting the people to talk about it. And once you talk to one person about it, many of those people know somebody else who they're willing to turn you on to. And I've even had those people not get back to me, having been recommended by their friend. So there's a stigma. There's a problem with Bigfoot where people are unnerved. They don't want to speak about it. They kind of want to push it out of their memory. A lot of people who have encountered Bigfoot say they're sorry it ever happened. They're suffering from like a PTSD, like a war veteran. They're traumatized. It's loused up their life of hiking and hunting in the woods. So this is not at all like a lot of people think of the creature that, I got to get close. I've got to see it. I need a photograph. You got people who are running for their lives from this thing. They're scared to death. Other people are walking around with flashlights in the dark trying to get up close and comfortable with this thing. I don't understand it, frankly.
Right. So hence you're domiciled in Long Island, as far away as possible from Bigfoot.
Well, Richard, first of all, I don't want anything to do with this creature. I have footprint casts sitting next to me that came from Oregon. I've been sent photographs. And, the interesting thing, Richard, is I live here on Long Island, right? We're in a relatively suburban area. Lots of houses, businesses. I'm a fisherman. I got to get away from where I am down to the ocean or the Long Island Sound to fish. But people in these places lose sight of the fact that there are 9.5 million square miles of real estate in North America. If you do a flyover from New York to California at night, you're lucky if you see a light bulb. There are plenty of places for things to live and thrive and hide. And I say continually that the people who are seeing these for the most part are people who are out there doing things that your average person doesn't think of doing, who lives in suburbia, who lives in a city setting, vis-a-vis hunting, hiking, fishing in remote locations, being in DEC, different environmental operations. By far, these are the people that are encountering these creatures.
most often when we hear about Bigfoot, we hear about this shy, elusive creature, and sometimes we even hear, oh, he can communicate or she can communicate with us telepathically. What we don't hear about this ferocious creature that has the massive strength, could pull us limb from limb, and in fact, you have some encounters that ended very badly for people. Some of them found in trees. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, and as we enter into this, Richard, some of these are evidential finds that I leave up to you, me, and the listeners to make a determination as to what we think happened. But relative to that evasion chart, I know a soldier that was in one of those meetings. You can imagine thousands of them attended them through the years. And when questioned about the Bigfoot on the chart, they were told not to approach them aggressively. And when asked why, the officer said, "We have people who did that, and it didn't end well." Now, you and I can read into "didn't end well" any way you like. My mind works that somebody is not with us anymore. And I always use the example of when I was a young boy on a paper route. There were dogs who wagged their tail and came out to let you pet them, and there were dogs that wanted to tear you up. And that's exactly the way I look at Bigfoot. It's an animal. You don't know what you're up against. You don't know if they're having a good day, a bad day, if they're half starving. They got a toothache. They don't like you just because they don't like you. You don't know what you're dealing with, and it's foolishness to think that you're going to have a good time when you encounter one of them.
Earlier, you had shared with me an episode where search and rescuers, I believe, found a missing female hiker, and she was found way up high in a tree.
Well, it wasn't search and rescue people. This event happened in Northern California. There were two hunters. They had gone into an area. Now, by the way, this area was only accessed by the way they had come in. This was not someplace you would just find yourself in. You had to drive there, park your truck, and hike. And they were in there looking for a couple of locations to place their tree stands for the season's deer hunt. They located a couple of locations, and on their way out, they decided to look into an area they really hadn't set stands up in before. So one went over here, one went over there, and basically they said, shout to me if you see anything. So the one fella does shout to the other guy, hey, come over here, you got to see this. He comes over to where he's standing, and he's by a large pine tree with big boughs sticking off of the bottom, above head height. On one of the boughs, there was what was remaining of an additional limb that had snapped off due to weather or age or whatever, was this stump. On top of the stump, shoved down over the stump, was a female body with the stump protruding through her chest. She was draped over the branch, one leg missing, wearing a running shoe on the other foot, shorts, a kind of lycra or spandex top, and she had a ponytail. They were standing there as anyone would. Like her body is, the stump is piercing through her body, and she's draped over it. Now, one of the observations they made was that not only was this horrific, but there was nothing to stand on or on the ground, or no way to get this body up to the height it would have to be pushed over the stump in the position they found it. Unless something had climbed up the tree, walked out on the limb, and pushed the body down on it, or was big enough to lift it up and shove it down over it. Now, I don't know what you think of that, but I suspect violent Bigfoot activity involved in that situation.
How did that story come to you?
From people, we were talking about the old school way of like running ads, and of course, at a time when long distance phone calls were very expensive. Now I have an iPhone. I have unlimited calling to North America and Mexico, including Canada. And of course, with the Bigfoot Terror in the Woods podcast, I'm getting data and information all the time, including pictures, all kinds of good things coming to me now in the age that we live in. So, there are people out there seeing things and reporting things. You just got to be willing to talk to them and to try to coax that out of them. It's just the way it is.
There's another story. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say a lot of people find me engaging listening to the podcast and having read the books, and they just come to me. In the cover of my book, I say, if you've seen something, say something, and I have my email address there. And just by that alone, people come out. I did see something. Here's my phone number. Go ahead.
When people recount these stories to you, and you mentioned some of them seem to be suffering perhaps from PTSD, this is not something they wish they saw. You also say in many cases they are just overcome with emotion telling these stories. In other words, these are not people telling these stories on a lark or trying to hoax you. These people, something very, very traumatic happened to these people.
Yeah, and I was taking an interview for a couple of hours just about a week or two ago from a fella in Oregon. He was getting choked up and emotional on the phone and just kind of had to excuse himself for a moment. And so his encounter was not horrific at all. Scary, yes. I would have been frightened to death. But just thinking about it and talking to me about it was choking this guy up. And I say, my wife passed away in July. You want to talk about being choked up and battling through some tears.
Yes.
But I'm not just walking around weeping about any old thing. It's got to be something traumatic before I start with the tears, And so when you're talking to somebody who says, I don't go into the woods anymore because of this. It loused me up. I don't like hunting anymore. I'm fearful. And I could tell you about some encounters here that would just rock your world.
Yeah, go ahead. I had one in particular in mind, but you offer one up, and then we'll get around to the one I'd like to hear about as well.
Absolutely. So all of these encounters, by the way, come from my books, Bigfoot Terror in the Woods, Sightings and Encounters. Now, this one I named the Bone Pile. I have two that I called the Bone Pile for different reasons. But this occurred in October 7th, 1999 in the Kootenay near Mount Oki. And this fella had hiked in for about 6 miles into the woods. And he reached a point where, realizing the woods had been full of life coming in, it now dawned on him that everything had gotten very still and very quiet. And he said to me that he felt a cold chill go through his body and actually like a charge. He called it like lightning passing through him. And he also felt that he was in imminent danger at the time. Now, all of this stuff just like piled onto him. And so he stayed there for a minute. The fog kind of cleared, so to speak, and he kept moving. Now, what he came upon was incredible. He sees a trail going through some brush, and he goes into it, and it opens up into what he described what looked like a campground. Tamped down, matted down ground with not even a weed growing through it. And in this campground setting are bones scattered everywhere. All kinds of bones, different animals, long, short, skulls. And he notices some camouflage. He goes over to where this camouflage is, and what he sees is the upper half of a human being that was wearing the camouflage jacket. He takes a stick, picks up the end of the jacket, what's left of it, and notices the pelvis and what is the rib cage of the individual who was evidently dead. Both legs were missing from the skeleton, and the arms and hands were visible through the decayed fabric as this poor man is laying on the ground. He describes the head. Now, when you find out what this guy does for a living, you're going to be blown away. He describes the head, particularly the facial structure, as looking as though a 6-inch pipe was driven through this man's head face on.
Wow.
Now, this guy was an orthopedic surgeon. Of all freaking people to run across a skeleton, an orthopedic surgeon. He left that place. He told me that he sold his extensive collection of firearms and never went hunting in the woods again.
How did he report that to the police? He must have.
Yeah, sure. No, he did. And he also went through the pocket on what was left of this camouflage coat, and he found an insurance card from an outfit in Northern California. So, how this guy got there, who he was, how that jogger got on the branch. These guys were not in a place where you would go jogging. That body was brought there from somewhere else.
The story that really sticks out for me, and I believe you covered this on the Bigfoot Terror in the Woods podcast as well. Mm-hmm. A group of fishermen, they had several boats. I think they were fishing for muskie, and they were just kind of offshore. Mm-hmm. There was really, really dense brush, but there was just a slight clearing leading down to the water's edge.
Yes. Yeah, I can bring you right into that. The report came from one of the boys who was on this trip as a youth. Of course, he's an old man now. And there was a total of 4 dads and 5 boys. This took place in 1967. They were living in Fargo, North Dakota. And a couple of the dads had gotten together and decided they were going to take themselves and the boys on an excursion up to the Ontario area to fish for muskies. So this was a real big deal then and today for any kids to go on a trip like this. So they had gone up to, I believe it was Perrault Falls Airport, and somewhere around there they caught up with a couple of float planes that took them over to a place, I believe it was called Ear Falls. And they had a cabin, a big cabin, plenty of place for the guys to stay and the kids. The fishing began. They had a guide. This guy's name was Lars, and they had 3 boats, 3 aluminum boats, outboard motors. They were going around the lake and fishing for muskies in the shallow. Most of the fishing was going on near the shoreline, throwing plugs into what was submerged weeds where these muskie fish were hanging out. He told me that when you went around the lake, no matter where you went, the forest was dense and hard up against the water. And there were certain locations where there was some exposed shoreline. You wouldn't call it a beach, but a barren area here and there where no trees had grown. So the 3 boats are lined up facing the shore, casting plugs, having a good old time. And they hear what sounded like a bellowing lion's roar. And they had asked Lars, "What is that?" And he said it was probably a bear. Now, later in the account, the fellow that shared it with me told me that when Lars said it was a bear, something in his heart told him it wasn't. And as we get into this, he was right. Well, so what happened, Richard, was another roar erupted shortly thereafter that, opposite in direction from the first one. So the witness said that, well, if that's a bear, he's either really fast or there's more than one. So these roars were going back and forth, and they were coming together to a point where they were happening just inside the woods in front of where they were in the boats. He told me it was so loud they were cupping their ears. And Lars told them to start the motors and move away from the shore. As they're going out, two Bigfoot come tumbling out of the woods onto this shoreline, slapping, grappling, and biting each other in what was like a ferocious fight, an epic battle right there on the shore in front of them. He told me that the sound was so loud it was vibrating the oars on the boats off the shore, and the waves were freaking coming out as they're wrestling and grappling with each other on the shoreline.
Wow.
Now, he also said to me that he felt they never punched each other. None of the blows were with a closed fist. They were whacking each other open-handed, grappling, kind of like Roman Greco wrestling. And he felt that the biting was used to gain an advantage, one over the fight. When finally he said that with one titanic blow, one was leveled onto the beach and in the water, and he thought it was dead. And when that creature hit the ground, the other one raised its arms up in the air, howling at a volume that was just like ridiculous. And that's when they split. They left this thing in the woods. It turned around, it walked back in, and they took off in the boats. Now, Lars went back to the scene the following day and came back and told them that the creature that was in the water was gone. So what happened to that creature, anybody's guess. Maybe it wasn't dead. Maybe it was knocked out. Whatever, it got up, was gone. Or maybe the other creature came back and dragged it away for dinner. I mean, I'm being facetious, but nobody knows what happened to the other creature. I mean, that is just an incredible. You can picture yourself as a young boy sitting in this aluminum boat. The fathers, the kids, Lars, they were just blown away by what had transpired in front of them.
And you were told this story by one of the sons of the dads who was on this fishing trip.
Right, who's now an older man, like I am.
Right, yes.
So just incredible,
Yeah, what do we surmise from that? That they're territorial? Maybe they have their own rutting season? Maybe they were competing for a mate?
There's no doubt about it. I mean, some of this stuff is as plain as day, as you've just mentioned. All animals fight. I have bucks around my house here, and I hear them tangling during the rut. I can hear their antlers clashing with each other in the woods. I mean, all animals contend for mates, for domination, bears, elk. They're all entangling with each other for domination of the females. I mean, that's just the nature of nature.
All right, let's go to the phone calls, and we'll begin with Jason, west of the Rockies in Olympia, Washington, Bigfoot country. Jason, welcome to Coast. You're on the line with William Sheehan. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Richard, for taking my call, and thank you, William, for this fascinating topic tonight. I'm a search and rescue volunteer here in Washington State. Proud to do it. I've been doing it almost a decade. We had a fascinating story amongst our folks up here about a yurt-type structure that was found in the Olympic National Forest with several dead deer around it. It was a structure that was formed with torn-off trees and obviously was not human-built. There was no saw marks or sawdust or any nature of that. They were formed together, this tree boughs and such. And so I was curious if William knew of the Bigfoot creatures, in his knowledge, if they build these types of structures. And there's a lot of missing people up in that area where the structure was found. And also, too, if William knew about the Nahanni Valley in Canada and the Valley of the Headless Men in the Nahanni Valley.
All right, Jason, great call. Thank you. William, do they build these types of structures? Do they build nests?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. In fact, I was going to read you an account I call the Fifth Bullet, where a structure was found and the man was attacked by a Bigfoot. But when you look at these structures, you're seeing limbs in there 3, 4, 5, 6 inches in diameter, fresh limbs that were torn off of a tree, twisted and torn away from a tree. Think about that for a minute. What on earth has the power other than hydraulic machinery to remove a tree limb from a tree? I mean,
Precisely.
You and I could spend a month of Sundays trying to do that, and all we do is tear the skin off of our palms. So, yeah, there are creatures out there that are building these huts or little domains or protective shelters for themselves, and a lot of people are finding them stuffed or matted down with pine boughs inside, and some of them have bones inside as well. So I don't think it's too far of a stretch to say that something non-human made these things, and it wasn't a bear, as so many people keep saying in all these Bigfoot incidents. Oh, it must have been a bear.
Sorry, I was just going to say, William, it also sounds as if one of their primary foods are deer.
Yeah, well, it's an easy kill, right? Either a small deer, if you find a fawn or a doe. I've had people report to me that they've seen these things running. I had a guy that saw one run down an antelope on the side of a mountain. Now, I'm not too sure how fast an antelope can run, but a lot faster than you or I, and this thing ran it down lickety-split like it was nothing. So 20, 25, 30 miles an hour. I think that runner, the Olympic runner, Usain Bolt, I think he was clocked at like 22 or 25 miles an hour. A Bigfoot, it's just off the charts, the explosive power they have in their anatomical makeup. But also, Jason, his area up there is rife with encounters, that whole Olympic Peninsula area and everything. And by the way, my friends, that is exactly where one of the evacuation training zone or survival training zones is on this survival training map that I have in my possession, right in his wheelhouse.
Back to the calls for William Sheehan as we discuss the darker side of Bigfoot. Let's go west of the Rockies, and Brian is in Kent, Washington. Brian, you're on the line with William. Go ahead.
Yeah, I got a story for you. It comes out of Oregon around 2000. Dr. Matthew Johnson had a sighting down in Southern Oregon Caves National Monument, and people were calling him up and emailing him because he's a clinical psychologist. And essentially what happened is a guy, a game warden from up north in McCoy National Forest, told him a story that was pretty amazing. He came down and bought him lunch. Essentially what happened was a guy, game warden said he had a friend who knew where Bigfoot was. He knew what part of the forest it was in. He was going in with a rifle and get one of them and prove the Patterson-Gimlin film was true. So he goes in, week comes by, nothing happens. Week comes by and he doesn't come out, so he goes in after him after 2 weeks, and he found him, what was left of him. According to the autopsy, he had been pummeled to death. No claw marks, no bite marks, just severe beating. His rifle was laying on the ground, 2 rounds fired out of it, and the barrel bent into a U shape.
Wow.
Yeah. And
that's remarkable.
This guy.
William, have you heard that story?
I haven't, but to go along with it, a fellow told me about his friend's wife called him on a rainy day saying that Chip hadn't come home, and he went to a place that they called the shooting gallery. It was basically a gouged out piece of earth where they used to go rifle shooting, target shooting. He told his wife he'd go down there and check on him. When he got there, his gear was on a picnic table they had in the middle of this dirt pit. And Chip was not there, and he wouldn't answer to his call. He saw some footsteps going up in the corner of the wall in the back of the pit. When he got up there, there was a puddle of blood, and Chip's Minnesota Vikings hat was laying in it. He then saw Chip's rifle bent in half, not too far from the hat. He went back down by Chip's pickup truck, surrounded by Bigfoot tracks, large human-like footprints, and then when he looked in the window of the truck, Chip's body was bent in half with his eyeballs bulging out, shoved in front of the bench seat under the dashboard.
Oh, dear Lord.
So, it doesn't surprise me that this man was pummeled to death. You ran into the Bigfoot that I'm talking about on a bad day, and for whatever reason, it decided to take out its angst on that man.
Brian, thank you for that call.
Rich,
Yes, go ahead.
I say all the time, Rich, if you meet up with Bigfoot and go home, you've had a really good day.
All right, let's go to the wild card line. Wayne is in Tacoma. Wayne, welcome to Coast.
Good evening, gentlemen, Sir Richard. And I had quite an experience climbing in the Olympic Mountains in 1966. It's the Lake Constance climb. It's a 4.4-mile round-trip climb, and it's like a 3,300-foot climb. Getting up to the lake's about 4,800 feet. And this is not an easy climb. It's not a casual hike. It's considered a Class 2 and sometimes a Class 3 scramble. It requires continuous attention and careful handwork to go all over up that area. And anyway, I had just come out of the military service, the Air Force. I had quite a harrowing experience there, and was getting together with a friend of mine to do this climb. And in the last minute, he just kind of backed out of the climb, and I said, "Well, I'm going to go myself because." I wanted to get away from the city, the family, commune with God. And I did this climb. Halfway up the climb, I met a couple coming down from the lake. They had been fishing there, and they caught 2 fish, and they gave me one of the fish. And I thanked them for that. And it took me a couple of hours to do this climb. Very harrowing and very hard. And it was getting late in the evening when I got up there. The ridge around the lake, the first area, it's about 300 or 400 feet from the woods. There's no woods up in this area. It's about and the woods there is the old tree growth. So about 300 or 400 feet above that on the ridge, I made it up there, and there was snow all around and ice all around, even on the lake, except for kind of in the middle where they threw their fishing lines, and the ground, like I said, was covered with ice except for one spot around the tree that was right at the edge as you get up. And so I said, well, I'm going to sleep here overnight. And I really didn't come prepared. I wasn't really a hiker or a climber or an outdoors guy. I came with not really heavy clothes. I did have a light down sleeping bag, and it was getting dark, and I knew it was going to be cold because I could feel the cold coming in. It was clear night, and this was in May of 1966, early May of 1966. And so I climbed in my sleeping bag, pulled it over my head, and it couldn't have been more than, and I was out sleeping right now. Couldn't have been more than 10 or 15 minutes later, I heard all this noise, clomp, 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 all around me, and so I stuck my head out, and there was these raggedy-looking mountain sheep or goats. They had the curly horns, rams, I guess you call them. They had the curly horns, and they were losing. It was a bright moonlit night. I could see their fur was coming off and that. And, they were going to keep me awake. So I just let out a bear call real loud, and screamed, and they scattered. And I said, good, I'm going to be able to go back to sleep. Well, unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. Every 5 or 10 minutes, they would come back wake me up, and I did this all night long. And needless to say, by the time the morning came around, this was like 9 at night, and I woke up at 5 or 5:30 in the morning when the sun came up. I really wasn't waking up. I mean, I was just frustrated, tired, exhausted. I got up out of my, bag, stuffed my down bag in my backpack, climbed on down to the ranger station where I'd parked my car. And the harrowing experience that I had was, getting down to the main road, and I shouldn't have been driving. I was so tired. And as soon as I hit the main road, within a minute, I fell asleep at the wheel.
Oh, dear.
And started going off towards the Puget Sound area, big hill that went down to the Puget Sound. And I just cried out, Jesus, help me. And there were bumps on the road that year. First year, the highway department had put bumps down the middle of the road. That woke me up for just a little bit. And, another less than a minute down the road, there was 2 hitchhikers. I picked them up, and they kept me awake all the way, into the. They asked me where I was going. I said Olympia, because that's where I lived, out on the bay, out from Lacey. And they kept me awake, and they wanted to be let out about 4 or 5 miles outside of town in the flat farm area. And so I said, oh, okay, it wasn't at an exit or anything. It was kind of in between exits. I thought it was kind of funny, but I said, okay. I pulled over, let them out, went, looked out. There was no traffic early in the morning, pulled out, turned around to wave goodbye. And these guys weren't there, and that kind of shocked me, because there was no place they could have gone. And, I didn't think much about it because I was so tired. And I got home, and I was so tired, I hit the sack, and I slept for 18 hours. But, later on, I realized, these weren't normal guys. You don't disappear like that. And then I thought even more about it recently. When I was up there with all these rams circling me, there was something else going on. And I don't know if it was a bear that had come out of this cave or a Bigfoot or what. I didn't hear any growling or noises like that. But I think these wild mountain goats were sent there to keep me alive, honestly.
Ah, fascinating. And so what were these 2 hitchhikers? What do they have to do with all of this?
Well, God sent these guys. They were angels.
To keep you awake. Right. Angels.
Yeah, they kept me awake.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
I believe that. Great call. Great story, Wayne. Thank you so much. Let's work in. Let me see. Neil is in Pittsburgh, California. Is that right? On the wildcard line? Neil, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can. Is it Pittsburgh, California?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay.
Well, Richard, thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure.
Always look forward to when you're guest hosting. You always have such great shows. I look forward to yours. I look forward to Connie Willis. And you guys are great. And I just want to tell William, thank you for coming on tonight. And a big shout out to his brother Kevin. And always carry more guns than you think you're going to need.
You got that right, brother.
That's how you end the show, right? That's how you and your brother Kevin end the podcast.
And by the way, Richard, I appreciate what the brother is saying there, but I'd like to hear from some of these people myself, and this is exactly how I gain information. If they go to BigfootTerrorInTheWoods.com and hit the contact link, I will call you. And you give me your number, and we'll get together and we'll discuss what it is you've seen and heard. And, we have the podcast, Bigfoot Terror in the Woods. We're in our 4th season. We got 4.7 stars, thousands of reviews. I'm talking Bigfoot all the time and a lot of other strange stuff. So tune us in.
All right, Neil, thank you for that. Go ahead, Neil. Neil, did you have another comment?
Yeah, I love the podcast, and I hope that when Connie goes on her Bigfoot excursions that she's really careful, because she does those.
Yes, she does.
Yeah.
All right, Neil, thank you for that. Let's say hi quickly to Don in Alberta. Hey, Don, welcome to Coast.
Hi, Richard. Hi, William. I was listening to the story about the highway tractor in and hitting the Sasquatch. If that's what it takes to take one out, it's pretty amazing. One day I was driving down a country road and with a highway tractor trailer unit, and this cat streaked across the truck in front of me. And I'm like, phew, kind of gives you a jump. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning. And then right behind that was the coyote, and it was thump, 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 thump. But that's not why I called. Recently in Jasper, Alberta, it's all over the net because this guy used to document his life. And there's a road that goes it's in the Jasper the park. Mm-hmm. There's a road that goes from Banff to the town of Jasper, and it's kind of just weaves through the mountains. And I'm pretty sure I know the range, but he took a video and he showed this tall, large thing. I don't know. Everybody's still debating whether it's correct or not. But and then it got worse after that. But anyway, he videotaped it and posted it online, and then he showed military helicopters coming in, posted online. Canada doesn't have much of a military, as you know that. And then some other stuff, and then he did some other videos saying it was all fake. And then he came back and said, no, it's all true. And then he disappeared. So I don't know what happened to that. But this thing would, based on the size of the mountain, if it's the one I think it is, I'd have to go out there and refresh my memory. But this thing was absolutely huge. I don't know if it falls into the Sasquatch category or not. The other question I have quickly is, previous guests on your show has said that Sasquatch can move from one dimension to the next. So even though you see them and you're, let's say, using a firearm on them, or the tracks disappear in the sand, it would give an indication why a firearm may not work against them. That, or they're a little bit tougher. So that's my comments and questions.
All right, Don, appreciate that. Yeah. The interdimensional aspect of Bigfoot. Your thoughts briefly, William.
Well, twofold. First of all, I had a couple of guys that almost got killed by a Sasquatch in Jasper National Park. But if we had more time, I believe there's two things going on with Sasquatch. You have a flesh and blood creation, a being that eats, drinks, walks, gives birth, lives and dies. And then I believe there is a mimicking going on in the satanic realm of Bigfoot that are not really living creatures. And this is the explanation for creatures showing up on infrared and basically disappearing behind a veil. You don't just disappear. Heat doesn't just vanish in the woods. It's got to reappear. It's got to show up somewhere. I don't care what kind of brush you're going through, you're going to see something. But I've seen videos of creatures going behind what appears to be a straight line. I also have tons of reports in my books, Bigfoot, Terror in the Woods, Sightings and Encounters, where footprints go and then they end.
Right.
No
okay.
Go ahead.
Well, we got to wrap it up here, William. We're going to have you back on. Absolutely riveting. Bigfoot, terrorinthewoods.com. You can check out the podcast there. And, of course, the Bigfoot, Terror in the Woods series of books. William Sheehan, thank you so much.
Awesome, Richard. My pleasure to be with you. Hopefully we'll do it again.
Absolutely.
If you want to listen to our show ad-free 24/7, access audio archives, live chat with me, and much more, you need to become a Coast Insider now.
So you're telling me your grandmother, who died a few weeks ago, came and visited you last night in your bedroom, and you're not scared?
Are extraterrestrials living among us?
I don't know if it's true or not, folks, but we're going to find out.
If you enjoy stories like these and want to learn more about the mysteries of the universe with me, become a Coast Insider now to access hundreds of our archive shows to listen anytime, anywhere. Sign up now at coasttocoastam.com/Coast Insider. That's coasttocoastam.com/Coast Insider.